there's two parts to the Cambodia agreement. There's one agreement between IndustriALL Global Union and an individual brand. That agreement is the agreement where brands make legally binding commitments to support the agreement that our affiliates and the Employers Association made and we're calling that the template CBA. The agreement between us and an individual brand, we've signed 11. That agreement has legally binding commitments, and it's the first legally binding agreement on a brand's commercial terms. A volume commitment to the country, sourcing on factories that sign the agreement, ring fencing labor costs, so the wage is paid for by the brand. And the fourth one is a skills development fund. The other agreement, the Cambodia CBA agreement, has real great improvements for workers. It has language around freedom of association, it has a grievance mechanism, it has wage increases, it has additional maternity benefits, and something that's new for Cambodia is paternity benefits. Brands sign this because they've made commitments in public commitments to have higher wages and better negotiated benefits. They want a way towards living wage. And we see this as the real solution to getting to a living wage. We know that ILO, through their recommendations from the experts meeting last year, recommended that if you want to get to a living wage, it's the social partners through collective bargaining that you do it. And as trade unions, we firmly believe that it's up to the trade union and the employer to negotiate this. You can't have some arbitrary benchmark. You can get data and you can get information on the cost of living, but you can't have an arbitrary living wage benchmark. That's really up to the social partners. And it's a real game changer, I would say, for for supply chain industrial relations, because brands are now signing on. They're working with their supplier factories for them to sign the CBA. And that all has then this really important and positive impact on workers because they already have then their own legally binding agreement that commits their employer to pay them extra money, extra benefits, have a grievance mechanism, have good language around freedom of association. But it's a real breakthrough in the sense that you're really institutionalizing industrial relations. You're building a model. But the brands still have a role in that model. This tries to change that model by ensuring that brands, through their pricing, so that their item prices will be more, and that has a delivery mechanism directly to workers through their employer. The agreement between IndustriALL and the individual brand is about the verification, because we have a way, we've negotiated a way to verify, to make sure that brands are actually doing this, right? So we have an independent assurance model that's called the verification protocol that's built into the agreement. So in addition to being legally binding, there is a way for IndustriALL through an independent assurance mechanism to make sure 100% that money is being ring-fenced in their purchase orders with these suppliers. So I would say we now have a double mechanism, and I think suppliers wanted that because the relationship between brands and suppliers is not an equal one, right? There is a lot of power dynamics there. So we wanted a way to make sure that suppliers were comfortable with IndustriALL having this enforcement role with the brands between us and the individual brands. So we've agreed on that. So there is a way, and has a few steps to it, that if there is say in a factory, we're alerted that the wages aren't being paid, right? That amount isn't being paid. There's a way for us to use that mechanism to talk to the brands, because the brands have to show us that they actually added that amount to the purchase item, right? The item that they're buying. And so there's an investigation period. We have an independent evaluator who kind of can come in and mediate between the parties. But if no solution is found, we do have the ability to arbitrate at the International Hague. So that's very similar to what we have in the International Accord. And that's what makes it legally binding. It makes it legally binding because you have arbitration of a multinational. And if there is an award given by the International Court of Arbitration, and the brand does not follow that decision by the arbitrator, we can then enforce that in the home country law. So that courts. So that's what makes a difference on legally binding in that sense.
Yeah, and so you say that 11 brands have signed so far, covering, I would assume, a substantial part of the industry in Cambodia. But how does it? I'm thinking two things. So one is, why haven't more brands signed on? What would be the argument for not signing on? And also, would it be possible for brands who haven't signed to sort of benefit this? As we have seen with the Accord, we've seen brands who haven't actually signed the Accord saying, oh, we produce in Accord factories, because a factory produces for several brands.
It would be very hard for companies who are not signing the agreement to give assurances to their supplier that they would pay the higher price.
Yes, because here it's actually
here it's actually like
money,
it's money, right? And that money has to come from somebody, and it's coming from the brands.
So there's no room for whitewashing.
There's no room for whitewashing, right? So if you're not signing, right, and you're sourcing in Cambodia, and you have a living wage commitment that you've publicly made, and you support freedom of association and collective bargaining in your code of conduct, then it's a no-brainer for you to sign, right? If that's what this whole process is. I think what's difficult for brands, why they might not be signing, is that they're not willing to pay more money, right? And they have a narrative out there that they want to pay more money. Well, here is the solution to wanting to pay more money. Now, I think that there's some hesitancy from some brands who might not be members of ACT, because we've worked a lot with those brands on ring fencing labor cost, how do you do all this work, right? So that, I think, is not an insurmountable problem, right? Because we have the technical assistance to help any brand do that. So if you have a will and you really want workers in your supply chain, and especially women workers, because in Cambodia, the industry is about 75% female workers. If you really have commitments for women workers, for workers in your higher wages, this is a win-win-win, we're saying, right? Because there's really the supplier wins, the brand wins, and workers win in this scenario.
So what would be the argument for not signing on?
I don't see any argument for not signing on. Sorry.
It's that easy.
It's that simple, right? I mean, it's a very solid agreement. It's very clear on what the what the brands have committed to support the CBA. And this is, I would say, the first step in really holding brands accountable for public commitments around living wage.
And you say it's a solid agreement, and it sounds extremely robust. I'm just thinking that it's still the primary agreement is between IndustriALL and International or Global Trade Union Federation and multinational brands who are not based in Cambodia. Is there political support in Cambodia for this agreement?
I think the government is looking at the agreement, right? In their national policy, they have, that they developed for the textile sector, they have reference to brand-supported CBAs. So this is actually a brand-supported CBA. I think it's important for the government to give the space to the suppliers and workers and their employers to have these discussions to discuss the signing of the CBA.
Good.
Any more?